Okay, so if you were to tell them, looking back on when you were a student, and we're going to make the jump for those, students that are considering becoming entrepreneurs, right? What is it when you were leaving school that you thought, right, that you now know was maybe kind of the wrong mindset, or you wish you had known at this point? Somebody that had told you, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in school, I didn't know many things. And I think also when you come out of school, you have a perspective on the world which is very, very different from what you need to be successful in the world. The most important things to take away from school is to learn how to learn by yourself, right? If you can teach yourself new skills, then that's the most critical thing you can take away from schools. Because then no matter how you're going to end up, you're going to teach yourself a new skill and you're going to reinvent yourself, right? I think what was really tough for me was when you come out of school, because, like me, I didn't know anything, but I thought I knew everything. You get, you fall on your face many, many times. You fall down because you thought you knew, you don't know, and you just got kicked in the nuts again. And what really mattered is, the attitude. I think that's one thing I really wanted to know, and that's really important if someone told me that, the attitude towards things, doing things, right? For example, when I was starting Lucid, especially in the beginning, because we had no funding, we had no, no investors or capital to do with, and I quit my job. I was full-time on Lucid. I was actually driving Lyft every night. So, it's Lyft, and some Berkeley students are like, why would you do that? I'm like, I don't care. Having the attitude to be the best and no matter what you do, right? Is it like cleaning the floor or washing dishes, right? That's what's going to get you successful. Not being afraid of getting your hands dirty and getting the job done and doing something which might be less than what you think of yourself. I think that's the attitude you need in startups to get the startup successful. And that's what most people lack. When I see people coming out of really top universities and they're like, oh, I want to be a manager. I wanted to be a manager too. Now not so much. But anyway, I think, think a little smaller and work on your attitude towards things. Because if you can move things and you can become the best in anything, then it's just a matter of time when you're going to be successful.
I have to say, this is one of the most real and accurate portrayals of startup life I've heard in a long time.
Thanks.
Really, because a lot of times you'll have startup founders that come up here and just talk about, they'll give a couple very minor failures along the way to portray lessons learned, but they mostly talk about their successes. But startup life is very hard.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, which is, I think, that a lot of people don't truly understand the kind of, frankly, emotional toll
for sure.
it takes on your life. We were talking about this before class.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
The physical toll
That's correct.
that it takes. And just overall, you were kind of talking about, and I think this is really interesting and good learning for class. You have a very, you said, serious exercise regimen that you have every single morning to keep you kind of grounded overall, just for everything that's required of your startup.
That's correct. Right? Because I believe, you have to see life in three areas, right? So relationships, career, and your physical health, right? Each of those three areas will impact each other, right? If your health breaks, it will impact the other two areas. You won't be as efficient in your career, and nobody's going to hang out with you. Not that extreme. But, think of your life in those three areas. And if you can understand that those three areas have to be balanced in order to be able to sustain yourself and to continue working. Let's say you do a startup and you grind yourself for 3 years or 2 years or whatever, and you end up in hospital. Is that the path you want to go? I mean, is that really sustainable? Is that scalable over the next 10, 20 years, right? You have to really ask yourself, and that's the trade-off you're taking when you're going into a startup, because you have pressure, you have the ups and downs, you have the emotional parts, you have the arguments and things which don't work every day, and you have no average days. Like, there's no day where you come out and it's like, oh, yeah, that was average day, that was great. No, it's mostly extremes. It's like either you have a really bad day or you had a really good day, right? Like, I mean, like there's no in between. And so imagine going through that many years. Then you understand what kind of debt you are taking on. Because that's why it's so important for me, like every morning at 6, I wake up, I go to the gym, I hit the, in order to get the stress out, to build resistancy to what's coming down the day, right? Taking time for myself to meditate and be in the zone, and then get out there and get it done.
Yeah, that's great. Questions? Okay, so we're going to go this way, starting there. 1.
You mentioned you went into the workforce initially for a few years before you started the startup. A common narrative that here at Berkeley is let's go work for a few years and then start a startup. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to just get into it straight out of school?
So I think there's no perfect approach here. I wouldn't say like some people who go directly out of school into startups versus people who go into workforce first and then go into startups are more successful. There's no proportional, relationship to that. But what I would say, like, it was good for me, looking at my path, it was good for me to see corporate. It was definitely important because I wanted to see what I'm missing out. Right? If you always, people always say like the grass is greener on the other side, right? Which is not. But if you don't know and you haven't seen it, so you don't really know if the grass is greener. And so if that temptation is not gone, then you might be, driving yourself crazy later down the road, right? So if you want to directly go into a startup right out of school, do it. Because I think one of the biggest regrets I had was that I started way too late. I started when I was like 26, 27. Like some kids here do it at 18. and because the earlier you do it, the less risk you have. Let's say you fail. What do you have to lose? Right? You have nothing to lose. You're young. You can stand up again. You can do it again. Or you go back to corporate and you make money, right? But the thing is, like, the younger you are, the less risk you are accumulating. So because you have less risk, of course, a perceived risk, right? You might think like, oh my God, it's full of risk. But perceived risk from an objective matter. So that means now to fail will not hurt you as much as later when you have a family, you have lots of kids, and who knows, right? That's pretty much the speech I gave my mom, so she let me actually quit my job and do this.
That's funny. We had 2 other questions.
Hi. Could you talk more about your entrepreneurial journey as an international student and
Yes.
what hurdles you faced because
Yes.
of that?
So I think as an international student, and I'm an immigrant kind of, moved here from Germany, and without a green card or anything, right? I think you are doing 2 startups. One startup is called your actual startup, and the other startup is immigration. And so you have to figure out how to balance both and make both work, which is extremely tough. And I know nowadays, like in 2012 when I got out of school, it was a little easier than now. Now it's a very big challenge, right? And so you always have to go out in the world with 2 startups running at the same time, trying to problem solve on both sides. And I was so relieved when I was able to fix both, right? Or fix one of them and then have only one to deal with because you have much more focus. So as an international student, and now with the, OPT, right? You guys have 3 years of OPT, right? I think as an international student nowadays, in this generation, you should ask yourself, do I want to be here? Do I want to stay here for the long term in the United States? Or do I want to just, try something and then go back, right? Do I want to have a stable career path, or do I want to have a little bit more risk? Because the more risk you take, the more return you will get, right? So if I was, again, as an international student at your age, in this generation, in this decade, I would say, I go nuts at it.